This episode is proudly supported by ArtsPay. As a hospitality owner, you know that when it comes to business, the right tools are everything, especially when it comes to payments. ArtsPay, based in Australia, is a payment solution built on a unique model. They give 50% of their profits back to the arts community. They provide world-class point-of-sale payments and support that make your operations run smoothly. But with every transaction, a portion of the fees helps build a permanent funding source for Australia's artists and cultural institutions. What's best is it costs less too. The result is a powerful way for your business to grow and become a force for good. You're not just taking payments, you're directly supporting the vibrant culture that makes our communities unique. ArtsPay believes that business should add up for everyone. For more information, go to artspay.com. ArtsPay. It pays to make the change.
I'd like to acknowledge Australia's First Nation people as the traditional custodians of the land, and for this episode in particular, the Peramang and Wiradjuri people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
If I can manage this vineyard and help other people learn about old vines and also make a delicious wine that comes from it that I can share, then it's a good thing and I can leave a lasting legacy for the next generation, be it my family or someone else out there.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Dylan Grigg is a viticulturist and devoted guardian of the vine. Through his consultancy, Meristem Viticulture, and his own label, Vinya Vella, he has earned a reputation for excellence and deep respect for the land. His commitment was recently recognised with the McWilliam's Excellent in Action Award, which was presented at the Australian Wine Industry Awards. I'm thrilled that he's come in from the outdoors to join me today. Hi, Dylan.
Hi, Shanteh. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for, breaking your schedule a little bit. I know that you're a very busy man and that you need to be outdoors doing things, but I'm thrilled that hopefully you get a second coffee today while we sit down and chat.
I'm already into my second coffee because I've already been out checking in and setting up some pruning, so we're good to go.
Pruning, it feels like you can't escape that in your life.
Not really, and I don't want to. So working in the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, the seasons tend to overlap, and pruning is just such an important task that one wrong cut can send the vine's structure or health backwards significantly. So it's a really, really critical time to be in the vineyard, and maybe speaking for more viticulturists as well, there's not as much pressure like there is during the entire season where there's very time critical because the rain's coming or harvest is coming or you've got to get things done. Pruning works at its own pace, which is a nice change.
That's so nice to hear because, you do think it is quite laboursome, your job, and you do wonder if there's times where you just think, gosh, I'd love to outsource this component, but I'm glad that you feel that way because there is a lot of work to do, and it's great that you have a moment where you can kind of just enjoy, like you said, without the time pressures, just enjoy the vineyard and do what needs to be done. But I'd love to know a little bit back into your history. You were always somebody that worked with your hands. Where did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about being an apprentice chef in your early years. Oh,
that's going to be a pretty short story. But I grew up in the Barossa Valley. So my family first moved there in the mid-1800s. And I'm the first of our family to own a vineyard. So we grew up, I grew up in the Barossa, surrounded by viticulture and wine, but never really took much notice. You'd always notice the ebb and flow of the seasons, like when there was harvesters on the road and everything was green, or when it was winter and everything was kind of dormant. But during high school, I got told really early on, I think it was year 9 or 10, I said, I want to be a civil engineer. And they're like, you got the wrong maths. Oh, really? Yeah, and you're not doing chemistry. I'm like, oh, what could I do? They're like, well, you're not going to be an engineer. And I don't think they do that these days. But I thought, well, that's a bit of a kick in the guts. What am I going to do? And I've always loved working with my hands, like you say. I've always loved being outside, and I've loved kind of creating and being creative. And one outlet for that was cooking, and I've cooked with my mum, and my great-grandfather was a German baker. You know, we've got cooking in the family. So after school, I finished year 12 and went and did TAFE course. So 3 certificates in commercial cookery, and started my chef's apprenticeship, which was going pretty well. You know, it's scratched that creative itch, but the hours were terrible and the pay was even worse. So it was one of those things where I was still a teenager, and I thought, oh, I can't do this forever. I need to find a job closer to home. So I quit the kitchen life, and the first job that I picked up was in a vineyard pruning, which was just totally by chance. It was how many jobs are there in Lyndoch in the Barossa Valley in June? So I took that opportunity to start working in a vineyard, which I didn't realise where that would take me at the time at all.
I love that we've already come full circle back to pruning. So tell me a little bit about, that first job. What were you tasked to do, and were you any good at it? Or, tell me a little bit about that first experience, because, going in, like you said, you're good with your hands. You know that that's kind of something that excites you and that you kind of can do, but there's a lot to it. So what was that first experience like?
I guess I thought, it's that classic thing. I guess I thought I was better than I was, because we were just pruning vines, and they were the days when you'd kind of prune a vine, step back, look at it and go, yep, job done, move to the next one. And it wasn't as detailed or technical as it is now. But that was an awesome opportunity. I had it was close to home in Lyndoch. It's now the Hillside Vineyard that's owned by Torbreck. So for my first pruning job, getting tasked to prune 100-year-old vines, the guy that taught me obviously told me how important it was, but some of those rules that he gave me or, instilled in me then have come around back full circle. And with this current interest or resurgence in quality pruning, it's interesting to see that some of those historical methods have held true. But to go back to when I got offered the job, it was just a job, and it was cold, and I'll never forget, I could hear my knuckles creaking, because we didn't have electric snips or anything, and we'd be pruning all day, and I'm trying to impress the boss and keep the work rate up and do a good job. And I'll never forget, opening and closing my hand and being able to hear and feel the grinding.
That's actually crazy. That is such a description, but I can totally imagine it.
Oh, I mean, I guess that's it kind of talks to moderation. Don't go too hard too soon. But I would, I'd go out pruning, and it'd be, freezing cold in the morning, and everyone would stand around, the pruning machine, because we had these air pruners. There was this motorised machine that you had to start up, and it would go down the row in front of you, and you had these air snips connected with a cable, and as soon as you touch them, bang, they'd make a cut. No one uses them now because they're so dangerous, but everyone would stand around beauty of the machine, and pruning machine doesn't work. And I'd be like, no, come on, let's get the spark plug out. Let's check the gap. Let's make sure that we can get this thing running. And my boss saw something in me then that, I didn't want to stand around, and I wanted to understand how things work, whether it was a pruning machine or a vine. So they gave me some textbooks on viticulture, which clearly from my high school days, textbooks weren't my favourite thing unless they were a workshop manual for a mini or something a little bit more technical. And I was reading those as I was pruning, and it kind of, some of these concepts and ideas clicked, and my boss offered me a traineeship, which I didn't know what it meant at the time, but they said, you get paid to go to TAFE to do certificates in viticulture. I'm like, what? I get paid while I'm at TAFE? They're like, yeah, you get a day off. I'm like, sweet, let's go. So I did 3 certificates in Viti, and then the fast forward is I changed to another job. This is during the 90s boom, so I got a lot more responsibility, a lot more hectares. worked my way up to management, and the interest that got me in those first days of pruning continued into management when I quit and went to uni to try and learn as much as I could.
Wow, that's really cool. And you went on to do your PhD, is that right?
I did. Maybe it started in high school, but I have a love-hate relationship with the university, so I couldn't wait to get in. I did it as a mature age because I didn't have the grades. And when I was there, I worked and I overloaded to do some Charles Sturt subjects while I was studying at Waite. And I was working in the viticulture lab under Peter Dry and Cass Collins and Marty Longbottom, and also consulting for Di Davidson. So I was full on into the uni life, but I couldn't wait to get back to industry. And then when I was in industry, we moved to New Zealand and lived on Waiheke and worked, and then came back to the Yarra and worked. And I always missed that time in the laboratory where you could go, all right, I've got all these samples to work through and I've got all this data to analyse, and actually have the time to think about things. The cadence of the uni life, like pruning, was a bit different to working at an industry. So I had that maybe 10-year break of travelling and working before my second child was born, and then we came back to Adelaide, and I was like, yep, I'm ready to go back to uni, and did the PhD.
I think that's cool because, you think, yeah, I don't love textbooks, but when you find that it's something interesting that you're interested in, all of a sudden, all these things that you didn't like previously kind of change, right? And you end up thinking, oh, I've just been like sitting down for a couple of hours reading this book and I didn't really think I was into it. And wonderful that you missed, like you said, you missed being out in the industry, but then you missed being in the lab. You can see that there's kind of compartmentalized elements of your jobs that you want to do a bit of both, but you want to balance. Tell me a little bit about your time in the Yarra and working for Mac, because you did mention that it was a really challenging but also rewarding part of your life.
Yeah, true. So it's that whole working with Mac was great because he'd always push and encourage trials, and we'd always be trying to learn from our own trials and mistakes and also from others. And that's where that acknowledgement that the world is pretty big and there's a lot of experience out there. And Matt consulted and worked in Austria, and he's travelled extensively overseas, so he's seen lots of things. And I had done some travel, not as much as him because he's got a couple of years on me. But I'd also spent a lot of time reading and learning. And, it's like early on when I opened up the Oxford Companion, that big Jancis Robertson book, and I didn't realise there were so many wine terms and there was so much knowledge out there to be absorbed. And that was one of the things that made me go, oh, how can you work and learn and work at the same time? So after living on Waiheke, we moved to Melbourne, and I got a job it was Sticks at the time, and Mac was renting a shed there, and Rob Dolan invited me in and said, hey, Dylan, you should meet this guy. He's a real mover and a shaker, and it was Mac. And from that moment, we kind of hit it off, and we had similar interests and maybe similar energy and interest in not doing things always the same way because that's the way they'd be done. But it was not even a year, I don't think, or maybe it was a year after that harvest, Max sent me a text and he's like, what's your last name? I'm like, oh, the dude doesn't know my last name. And I'm like, oh, Grigg. And then, 30 seconds later, he punches out an employment offer on his BlackBerry. And I'm like, wow, thanks, mate, but this is 2 days a week. I need a job. And he's like, no, you'll be right. Don't worry. You've got the knowledge and the skill. You should go consulting. So he kind of pushed me out that way to say, come work for me for a couple of days a week, 2-3 days, I don't remember. And the other time you'll find work, mate. Don't worry. And that's how I got my first client in the Yarra Valley, by, knocking on doors and introducing myself to people and just being honest and open with what I know and what I don't know.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, obviously that worked nicely for Mac, and that makes sense. But to know that there's, he is somebody that, like you said, he's done consulting himself. He probably knows the benefits of being able to have that kind of varied work and see what else is in it, because you may not stay with him forever. And that's kind of a lovely blessing that it was extended. And maybe you would have maybe you would have done it eventually, but maybe not as soon as that.
Well, I think the comment I said to him is, I'm like, I can't be a consultant. That's like for old people. But he's like, no, but it's about your experience and it's about communication. And you can, if you want to help people, you can help people. And this is one way you can do it. And that's, I guess, something that's kind of stuck with me. I mean, we're also mates, and I still work for him today. So that's Amazing. From 2007 or 8 or something like that.
That's very cool. Now, you decided that you needed to have your own consultancy company, and that Meristem and the brand name started in 2008. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you went on to do your doctoral thesis as well. Is that the same time or a bit after?
So from 08 until I think 14 was my last full-time vintage in the Yarra. So 13, 14, I came back to South Australia and back to the University of Adelaide at Waite, and had the opportunity to study a PhD looking at grapevine age. So the consulting, I did less travelling during that period when I was studying, but I still kept my core group of mates, clients. So I was still running the viticulture consultancy. I just wasn't taking on new jobs because I had to balance my time with a young family, postgrad studies, plus working and consulting.
Mm. And, your thesis on grapevine age and how it influences the growth and the quality of wine, I mean, so relevant to this day and so important that we know these things. Did you feel like you were going down a bit of a kind of wormhole as you kind of researched this? And was there ever a time you were thinking, this is so big, how am I going to put it into, a couple of 100,000 words?
No, pretty much the whole time. even one of my friends and good mentors, Peter Dry, said, Dylan, I don't know, you're crazy doing this, because there's not going to be a binary answer. There's not going to be a yes or no, black and white. It's going to be really difficult to write up, as biological research can be, because of the sheer number of variables involved. But I still, when I had the opportunity to do it, I mean, I keep up with the research, but even today, there's only a handful of people that have studied at this depth, and not many across the breadth. So given the opportunity, when I went back to the uni and talked about what I might be able to do, I said, I don't want to do a PhD on one particular avenue of research, like a single protein or a single method. I would like it to be broad, which brings with it challenges. So I had a lot of supervisors and a lot of different disciplines of science to get my head around. But having own-rooted old vines in the Barossa Valley, like we do in some other regions in Australia as well, was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, because to have time as the treatment variable is a very rare thing, which is why not many people have studied it, for one, and also the complexity of the research. So this was a great opportunity to sink in and spend years reading, researching, and then make a publication that can be a bit of a baseline. Like there's so many avenues that I could have taken to go even further down a rabbit hole, but it would have been to the detriment of other avenues that I wanted to shed some light on. So there's quite a few different areas within my thesis that someone can pick up and run with from now on. So I think it's a really good grounding work for vine age and vine longevity as it relates to vine health and grape and wine quality.
Incredible. And it's so, like I said, so relevant for our country in particular, because we have these incredible old vines. And luckily, people like yourself who are custodians of them now. But I do want to know a little bit about this trip over to Spain with your family.
Yeah, well, that happened mid PhD. So during the PhD, you get had a couple of scholarships to do the main core of the research, and then you can also get little side scholarships to travel and present your research. And that took me to Italy and to Spain. And while I was there, a grower or a wine company said to me, "Wow, this is all pretty interesting. I like the way that you're explaining things. Do you think you could come and spend some time here and then tell us what we could do better?" So that was vintage, I think 16 or something like that. With the whole family, we went over and, lived in the Costa Brava, and I did vintage, and I left them a nice little report. And then they said, "This is awesome, but we can't implement this. Can you come back and implement it?" So I'm like, "Oh, what? Okay. Let's figure out how this is going to work." So they knew I was mid-PhD. So I came back. I worked my butt off day and night to finish the PhD and submit it almost on time. I think I had an extension of a week or something, and finished renovating our house. And then upon finishing the PhD, I submitted. 4 days later, we had our house settle. All of our furniture and belongings went in a shipping container to Mum and Dad's in the Barossa, and we flew out to Spain with a one-way ticket to help to bring this company's viticulture up a notch, 2 or 3, focus in on single vineyards and help them fine-tune their viticulture for premiumisation. I don't know, improving the quality, basically. So that was it. We moved over with 2 young children, lived in a tiny village in the Costa Brava, north of Girona, so near Figueres or Cadaqués, if you know those places. And that was about 3 years. And right before COVID hit, so Christmas 19, our daughter had just been born in Figueres, and we flew back and hit the reset button and started life again in the Adelaide Hills.
Crazy. I mean, to move your entire family, it's one thing for you to go over, I think, but to move your whole, I mean, Costa Brava is a beautiful part of the world. I can see it's not in the, it's not in the middle of Spain where, but still a big ask of your whole family to go over there. Were they incredibly willing? Did they look at it like an adventure, or were they a little reluctant?
Well, my kids didn't have much choice because they were too young. But no, my wife Tash was right behind it. She's been an awesome supporter. Like, without her support, I couldn't be doing the the hours, the travel, and the 24/7 viticulture that I do now. And she thought, well, a little career break to go over and live in Spain and learn Spanish or Catalan and us be together and have that change of life. How many times do you get that opportunity? So we just grabbed it and took it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible, but like you said, putting your stuff in storage, knowing it, like, it is a big endeavor to do, but also, yes, like you said, once in a lifetime. And I often tend to think that, once you have kids, you don't get those opportunities, but, like you said, it can be done. And I think that's really cool. And even if your kids were little at the time, there is going to be core memories made there, which is pretty cool.
Oh, there is, and we've got so many family memories and photos, and our house is splattered with images or big pictures of the Costa Brava or our time in Spain, and we've got things that really connect us to there. I mean, my daughter's she's got Figueres written in her passport. And we've got lifelong friends. I had a good friend come over just a couple of weeks ago from Catalonia to stay with us. So it's it's a special place to us, which I don't think we can ever leave behind.
Yeah, that's for sure. So tell me, when you come home in 2019, the world has changed a little bit, or is on the way to changing a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what the plans were on your return home and what those next couple of years were like.
Yeah, so the plan was really we really didn't know, like moving to Spain. The plan was we bought a house, sight unseen, while we were living in Spain because the kids are a bit nervous and they're like, oh, Dominic had lived more time in Spain than he'd had in Australia at that time. So putting them on the plane to say, hey, we're coming home, they're like, what is home and where is home? And we didn't want it to be too unsettling, renting a place and starting at a school and then finding somewhere to live and having to move again and again. So we bought a house. We flew in on Christmas 19 and we're like, whoa, this is 19. I think the Adelaide Hills were on fire. Like, it was smoky. It was hot. And then there was murmurings of COVID in January, and then I remember in February at harvest time is when things really started to get weird. So I had the same group or a similar group of clients that were with me when I left. We'd obviously kept in touch, and if they had any questions, my phone was always on. So we kept in contact while I was away, and I did make 2 trips back to Australia. So I had some work to go on with. And I also picked up some work, a postdoc position at the university. So, we could pay the bills going into COVID, but the plan was really unknown, just to keep consulting and try and settle down and keep living, learning and loving life as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, it was a strange time, and relationships and those loyal relationships that you form, especially with consulting work or working with growers, whatever it may be, I think that all of that kind of stuff really was highlighted in those years, because it's what kind of, kept us going, kept us afloat. When did you decide that you wanted your own brand, and when did kind of Vinya Vella, or when was that born?
I guess it's like going to Spain. Some things you might have a dream about, but it wasn't in our plan, like our 5-year. I mean, we don't have one, but it wasn't something aspirational that we were working towards. It was like the chance to do a PhD or live on Waiheke Island or move anywhere around the world. It was an opportunity where you go, hang on, this could be something special. Let's make the most of it, because we might not have a second chance. Mm-hmm. So when I was living in Spain, I met Richard and Carla in Cadaqués, actually, and they said, hey, Dill, we've bought this old vine vineyard in the Barossa. You're the old vine guy. When you go home, can you help us run it? I'm like, no, yeah, okay, but, this is like 18 or I don't know, it was in halfway through our stint in Spain. So I got in contact with the vineyard then, and then when I landed in 2019 or the start of 20, started working more closely hands-on with this block that we now call Vinya Vella. And after the COVID vintage 20, coming into vintage 2021, I was calling Richard to talk about picking times, and he said, Dill, we need to sell the vineyard. And I'm like, oh, man. First thought is, I'm going to lose this amazing vineyard, and this is a great opportunity, and it's an amazing site, and the fruit and the wine could be something really special. And then I was at the vineyard. I think Dad was in the car, and I'm explaining it to him on the way home. I'm like, man, Richard's going to sell the vineyard. Wouldn't it be amazing to buy it? It's Grenache, which is climate sensitive. I've just been working with Grenache in Spain for 4 years. It's really good with its water. It's in the Barossa Valley. I grew up in the Barossa Valley. It's also growing on this deep sand over clay, which is exactly the same soil type that I grew up on in the Barossa. Mum and Dad were able to afford their first block of land to build our house on because it was the vine pool and it had a worthless variety at the time, which was old vine Grenache. So we get to right that wrong by looking after some old vine Grenache. And then I thought about the piece of selling some fruits helps me communicate about viticulture and the value of old vines to a wider audience, and then making some wine helps me also to share my knowledge and passion about viticulture and old vines to an even greater audience than I would be able to reach if I was just out there on the tractor or with dirt under my nails. So when I added up all of these things, it kind of ticked a lot of boxes, which made me then call my industry mates and mentors and build the courage to talk to my wife and say, hey, that vineyard, it's for sale and we've got a chance to own it. And her response was, you said you never own a vineyard. And I'm like, yeah, but, it's not like all the ones I work with in, Tassie, Victoria, Adelaide Hills. There's no foliage wires, there's no posts. There's no nets. They're all bush vines. I just listed out all of those positive attributes, how it lined up with the PhD, with where my family grew up, all of these things. And she's like, all right, well, if you think we can make it work, I'll support you and let's have a crack at it. And that's how we came to start Vinya Vella. So in 21 was the first harvest, and we took ownership at pruning for season 2021. And from then on, it's been Dad and I, and then other helpers that I get through the season when it's too much to manage the 5.5 hectares on our own.
Mm. When you were just describing how it all came about, I mean, you completely had me sold. There are so many elements in that feel like it's more than coincidence, and it's come full circle. And bless your wife for jumping in with you, but it sounds to me like it was meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, Richard said, he said that he wanted to sell it to someone that was going to care, and a great mentor of mine who lives just around the corner and helps with the winemaking is Pete Shell, and I talked to him about it a lot, and he said, Dill, vineyards like this need to be owned by people like you. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think you're right. So some days when I'm getting up at 4 a.m. or, slaving away or stopping the tractor mid-row because I'm, doing an undervine weeding pass and someone's calling and needs some advice quickly, or I'm ducking to the shed for an email or a Zoom meeting, I'm like, no, this is for the greater good. And if I can manage this vineyard and help other people learn about old vines and also make a delicious wine that comes from it that I can share, then it's a good thing, and I can leave a lasting legacy for the next generation, be it my family or someone else out there, which is why, it's all Grenache, mainly all Grenache, but I've got the odd Curio variety, and I go out and I just stick Curio varieties in the ground because I love walking through old vineyards and going, oh, what's that? And then you've got to try and figure out what variety it is. It's a minute percentage, but it adds to that interest and intrigue in old vine vineyards and mixed plantings that I saw in Spain. So I get to have a little bit of that inspiration in my own backyard in the Barossa.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, I bet you sometimes think, thank God it's 6 hectares and not 60 hectares, though.
Oh my God, I wouldn't be able to do it. And sometimes I think, if it was 2 hectares smaller, I could do a single operation in a day or 2 days. But no, it's just a manageable size. Obviously, if I had loads of time to spend out there, I could get ahead quicker, but I've got to be realistic and things have got to be sustainable in the sense of, business sustainability. So if I'm looking after it, it's going to stay in the ground. Whereas if someone else is looking after it and they're like, this is just not returning because 2 years in a row of frost is a bit of a killer, or it's a line on a spreadsheet, someone might be like, I can't attribute value to this block, so it's going. And we don't want to lose more of our old vine vineyards around the place if we can help it.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You said it might be just a line in an Excel spreadsheet that someone looks at and goes, this doesn't make any financial sense. And it can be as simple as that. The Barossa Old Vine Charter has done remarkable things for our old vines. Are we doing enough in this country? And what more how can we protect these incredible old vines from state to state?
I think we're doing a good job. I think we can do and we will do a better job going forward. I mean, one thing, the elephant in the room is the phylloxera that's in the eastern states, and the reason that South Australia has a lot of old vine material, and like most of the old vine hectares in the world, we've got huge areas of that in South Australia because we've been able to keep phylloxera out. So that's a massive risk with tourism and travelling around. So making people aware of how precious this vine material is, that a lot of it is pre-phylloxera, so before the vines in Europe were going through their great decline. And the other thing is communicating what volume of old vine material we've got, the genetic resource that we're an island of pre-phylloxera grapevine material of these globally significant varieties, because a lot of people overseas, the New World, Australia, they don't know that we've got these crazy old vines that are older than most of the vines in Europe and the old world because they were replanted on rootstocks. So we've got an incredible opportunity to market that. It's just a matter of keeping on pushing and communicating the value in these long-lived perennial plants.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people mention, phylloxera will come eventually, and it's such a scary thought. I don't know whether it's the right thing to be thinking that way, or just like you said, is it more, all about communication and let's just do what we can to really let people understand how precious they are and protect them as best they can. I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, it's one of those things where, people do say it's not, it's not when but if or something like that. But it is a real challenge, and it's about educating, because it's so easy to, be on a wine tour and go out and have a tour in one region and then put your jacket down and go for a little bit of a walk out in the headland or the vineyard, and the very next day you could be in South Australia. I'd love to see a sticker on the back of every aeroplane seat or a big one at the airport, but that won't happen. So we've just got to keep the biosecurity strong at the farm gate and work together as an industry to communicate. And if someone's on a wine trip, hey, where have you been? Hey, where are you going? Hey, you got to be careful, this, that and the other. Because, I don't know, did you see the news that just this last week that Tenerife, I think it's Tenerife, has got phylloxera.
Yeah, Canary, yeah.
The Canary Islands, I mean, they've got vines that are hundreds of years old, and I always thought that it was because of the volcanic soil that they didn't succumb to phylloxera, but it turns out it wasn't there, and now it is.
Yeah, so scary.
We don't want to be in the news with that.
Not at all, and I am so with you. I think that every time I fly back into Australia, I'm like, why isn't there something that's popped in here, because they're already telling us that we can't, get rid of your fruit, do all of that. So if they could make it into a beautiful little video that we watch and understand why, I just think it's just going to drive the message home. But it also can be a beautiful, the effort they put into getting us to watch that video about our seatbelts and stuff. I mean, come on, we can do that for getting rid of all the other crap that people and yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing we can harp on about.
It is. I'm not going to say that passenger safety is of greater importance. No, that vine age is greater importance. But no, I'm totally with you, because one thing that we don't realise, and it's happening more and more, is that if we have introduced pests with the changing climate kind of conditions, the acceleration of issues can be even greater. And yes, losing one crop is one thing, but people don't realise that Vitis vinifera, we're all growing essentially the same vines and almost the same varieties, and they can live for hundreds of years. So a bug that can kill a plant that's over 100 years old is a big loss, because that 100 plus years we can't get back.
That's exactly right. My husband's always slightly frustrated because I always take so long to come through customs, because I'm always like, no, you need to spray these shoes. These ones here and these ones.
Check my boots. Yeah.
I'd love to know, with doing the work of kind of consulting that you do, is there ever moments that are a bit kind of Gordon Ramsay-esque kitchen nightmares kind of vibes, where you've given all this, wonderful wisdom, and then you come back to visit these people and they've just thrown it all out the door?
Gordon, I think I'm a bit more diplomatic, but yeah, there certainly are. I mean, I have a great group of clients, vineyard owners, winemakers that I work with, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to choose, and you can identify pretty early on those working relationships, and I don't have a lot of spare time to be taking on new clients without finding that out. But yeah, I've had situations where I go out to a vineyard and I'm like, hey, this is not at all what we planned. And you need to make it explicitly clear and go, right, this is where you went wrong, and these are the consequences of the decisions that you've made. This is the reason why I outlined what we should have been doing. Now, let's just pick it up and move on and turn it into something positive and go forward. So I've had those situations. I've been out to vineyards, and I had students with me one day, and we went to a vineyard, and there was downy mildew, and it was out of control, and I'm like, what is going on? And someone made some silly decision that a 5-minute phone call would have averted. But we got back in the car and they said to me, oh my God, Dill, that is like the worst. I said, mate, that's the worst I've ever seen. They're like, how are you so calm? I'm like, well, if I went out there Gordon Ramsay style and told this guy, mate, you're at risk of losing everything, it's all going to shit because you didn't do this, this and this, I'm like, where's that going to get us? So you go out, you go, right, we've got this situation. How can we correct? How can we pick up and move on and try and resolve the issues that we've got and finish strong? So try to set up plans and work with the weaknesses that the grower might have so they can avoid that in the future. And then they usually don't do it twice. So some of those Gordon Ramsay type moments, you do go out there. The worst ones are when someone's gone out with a chainsaw and you're like, oh, sometimes I'm just without words.
That was such an honest answer to that question that I gave you. I really appreciate it. But at the end of the day, they're paying for your wisdom. You know what I mean? And it's like you want them to get something out of that. So I think, straight shooting is a very good thing. Yes, it can be done without a lot of explicitives, but I think that that's really important, that you can give them the information they need to make the best decisions.
Yeah, you've got to be realistic within. It's kind of like that. You've got to understand where they're coming from and where they are in their kind of journey of vine management or grape growing or whatever it might be, because you can go out and fly off the handle, or you can propose something that's completely unrealistic. But it's really about working together, because when you're consulting, you can go out and write a list of things to do and then come back in 3 months and then they haven't done it, or come back in a month or whatever it is, and it's a disaster. But that's not satisfying or fulfilling for anyone. So it's really about trying to work together and work within the constraints and the philosophies of the landowner or the vine owner.
Such a holistic, reasoning behind everything you do, which I love. Dylan, we're going to have to go through this super quick. I want to hear about 3 drinks. If you're going to have 3 drinks for the rest of your life, what are they going to be? This is going to tell me a little bit. I'm going to totally judge you. No, just kidding. But it will tell me a little bit about your palate.
Okay. Wow. All right. 3 drinks. It's just, I was imagining a desert island. Is that the scenario?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So it's going to be warm. I'd say beer. Yeah, I do love a beer to put a full stop at the end of a day, especially a day of toil in the vines. And maybe I'm a lightweight, but I'd say, if it's an oxymoron, but a full strength mid-strength beer. So something that I can knock back or have a couple of. Dad and I call them water beers. They just go down well and hit the spot. So that'd be one. Another one would be, it'd have to be a white, maybe a Shannon, or maybe, no, what about a Hunter Sen?
It's classy, nothing but class.
Oh, well, it's quenching and refreshing when young, but then if I'm stuck on a desert island, it'll age beautifully. And if I've got time and I've got the years, it can match any occasion if you give it enough time, perhaps.
Yep, totally agree.
That's a nod to Australia as well. And then obviously I think I'd go with a Grenache, and I'd go something from Spain, something aspirational, whether it's from high elevation or calcareous soils, or something that's a bit on the lighter style that's not too heavy.
I love it. You're all class, Dylan. Thank you so much for joining me. I've loved chatting to you, and I really hope our paths cross soon and we can continue our chats further on what Qantas should be doing.
No, it's been awesome. We should share a glass of Vinya Vella sometime.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, and I hope the rest of your day goes smoothly. Cheers to you.
Cheers, Shanteh. Bye.
This is Over a Glass. I'm Shanteh Wale. Stay tuned for more stories from the world of wine and drinks. Listen in every Thursday on your podcast app. Follow us on Instagram @overaglasspod and contact us at overaglass@deepintheweeds.com.au.